Tampa Bay Buccaneers from the 48-yard line. Second down, 13. Brady lobs one downfield. Caught ball by Gronkowski inside the 20 to the 15-10. Gronkowski to the 5 to the 4-yard line. Holy guacamole. Here's the snap. Pressure coming from the outside. Brady throws it back. Caught ball first out of the 50. Outside the numbers 40. To the 30-yard line. To the 25. It's Perriman. Bashaud Perriman. Touchdown Tampa Bay. Bucs win in overtime.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty. Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. It has been a little while. I am your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucs fan himself, Mr. Evan Wanish. I don't even know what episode this is. But the last time we talked to you guys, Tom Brady had just retired. We had no idea who the quarterback for the Bucs was going to be in 2022. And now that we are talking to you guys again, although at times it has looked like the opposite, Tom Brady is still retired as of this recording. And we still have no idea who the Bucs quarterback is going to be in 2022. But it is the week of the Combine. We are right around 10 days away from the start of the new league year. So we're still here. How you doing, Evan? What's up, man?
We are not dead.
Yeah, we are still here.
Both me and Rhett are alive and well. Okay, so I appreciate some people on Twitter and stuff, on Instagram, wonder where we were. We were just taking a little bit of a break, but we are back now. Don't worry. And yeah, it's crazy that it's like you said, 10 days basically, and it's going to be free agency. Like, it is really remarkable that we've gotten to this point so far. And I don't know what it is. It just felt like the whole month of February is kind of blew by. And yeah, so we're here to talk about, we have a lot of topics. It's not like there's going to be any shortage of topics. We talked about one retirement, but then last week, there was, what was it? It was 6 days ago because we're recording this on Saturday. So I think it was last Sunday. There was another surprise there for waiting for us. So, yeah, we were here to talk about it.
Yeah, 7 years in a Buccaneer uniform, Super Bowl champion, Pro Bowler in his final season. Ali Marpet, our offensive guard, one of the best guards in Bucs history, called it a career. And a statement actually came out in an interview with his dad, of all people. And it kind of confirmed what many people had thought. This dude played at such a high level, but 7 years in the NFL. If I'm wrong here, I don't think I am. 28 years old, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, for an offensive lineman, you don't typically think of, these guys taking abuse like that. But, I mean, it is contact every single play. And Ali Marpet is choosing his health in a long-term situation. He retired. A couple days later, proposes to his girlfriend. He's getting married. So hats off to Ali Marpet. Let's clap it up for the big guy,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the best offensive linemen in Tampa Bay history. Wish we could have had him a little bit longer, but you know what? You can't blame him at all for making a choice like that.
No, absolutely not. And, he's very fortunate to go out really in good health, right? Somebody like Luke Kuechly, who kept playing and kept playing and kept playing, even though Ali Marpet didn't really sustain as many injuries as Kuechly did. Kuechly's life might not be the same now, right? Because, one more concussion and that dude might be done. So, it's awesome for Marpet to be able to walk away. He did it all, right? He made the NFL out of Hobart, for one, right? Doesn't have to say, oh, I never made a Pro Bowl. Did that. Doesn't have to say, oh, I didn't make a lot of money. Did that. Doesn't have to say, oh, I didn't play well. Did that. Doesn't have to say, oh, I didn't win a Super Bowl. Did that. So what more was there to accomplish, And obviously it was a surprise, right? Anytime a 28-year-old retires at a high level, it's going to be a surprise. But at the same time, now this creates an interesting scenario. We'll get into it with the Bucs offensive line group, because there's a real potential that 3 guys from their 2020 and 2021 offensive line could now be gone, right? We know one definitely is, and Ali Marpet, and the other 2 maybe. So yeah, it was certainly a surprise. I initially thought it was a fake tweet because I saw it from Greg Allman at first. And with Twitter nowadays, you never know.
Yeah.
But I initially thought it was fake, and I was like, And then I actually went on Twitter myself. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you. We'll talk about the offensive line. While we've already talked about Ali Marpet, I'll close it with this. Obviously, one of the best offensive linemen in Bucs history. I've said that a bunch of times. Has to be one of the best small school draft picks of all time. Like, I know that there's a couple of guys on this offensive line, Ryan Jensen being one of them. We'll talk about him here in a second, but these guys pride themselves on not only making a name for themselves in the NFL, but coming out of a school that, you really just is definitely not at the top of any scouts list. You know what I mean? Like, the way that these guys have put on for their program, the level of play that Ali Marpet has put on the field over the last 7 seasons has really been a blessing to this organization. And I'm glad that he was able to get a ring, get it done. And his last quarterback ever was the greatest of all time. Like, what a way to go out, right? Dude goes out a champion.
Yeah, absolutely. You're really, it's the perfect career. that literally is the perfect career. And he was friends with Donovan Smith. He got to play alongside one of his closest friends, literally right next to him, winning a championship. Like, that's stuff that movies are made of, man. So
the Ali and Donovan show. I know we haven't gotten any new installments of that over the last couple of seasons, but the real ones remember. If you were watching the Bucs before Brady, we didn't have Tommy and Gronky. We had the Ali and Donovan show, and that was really good stuff, man. I'm going to miss that for sure. Let's talk about Ryan Jensen as we talk about these guys on the offensive line, potential free agents, and of course, we'll get a little bit more into what Bruce Arians and Jason Light said about these guys at the Combine this week, but there has been some smoke on the Twitterverse, as there usually is this time of year, right? But it definitely makes a lot of sense. The Bengals are a team that might be interested in a guy like Ryan Jensen, and for Ryan Jensen, it's a really good situation for him if he wants to continue winning the level that Cincinnati can probably continue to win. Obviously, they need to bolster up their offensive line. Played a great game in the Super Bowl, but when you give up a record amount of sacks in the playoffs, the trenches are only going to get you so far. So they know what they need to do, and Ryan Jensen is one of the guys on their list. What do you think about all of this, man? Do you think Ryan Jensen, who has said before that he would like to retire in Tampa, do you think he does what he can to try and stay in the red and pewter, or is moving on to the next winning team what's going to be on his agenda?
Well, yeah, I mean, first off, in that Super Bowl, the offensive line held up decent for Cincinnati in the first half, but in the second half, then
they did. We actually haven't talked about the Super Bowl. No. Everybody watched it. We know the team that won. But yeah, I thought the first half of that game for Cincinnati, they were hanging tough, man.
Yeah, and I mean, the second half though happened, and they sort of got dominated. So Ryan Jensen makes a lot of sense. Ryan Jensen makes a ton of sense for the Bengals. You want to upgrade your offensive line, get the best center on the open market. Like, there's a rumor. I believe Adam Pac-Man Jones, who was a former Bengal, had said that he had heard. Now, I mean, Adam Pac-Man Jones, so take it with a grain of salt if you will, but he had heard that Ryan Jensen to the Bengals was going to happen for a 3-year deal for about $39 million, which would be about $13 million a year, which would make Jensen, I believe, the highest paid center in the NFL, and would be, I think the Bucs paid him $10 million a year on a 4-year deal originally. So if he gets 13, I think you can wave goodbye to him. I do think he likes Tampa. We'll have to wait and see. We don't know if that rumor is true or not. It's still very early. Despite me saying that free agency is very close, stuff like that is still very early to tell. So
I will say this. While we are on the topic of Cincinnati and we are on the topic of rumors regarding Bucs players, Rob Gronkowski has yet to
But
announce
yeah,
his
they're
retirement.
they're both going to be
Yeah,
there.
I guess the Bengals are the next Tampa Bay. Maybe they'll lure Tom Brady out of retirement, and they'll send us 5
Well,
first-round
they
picks.
have the next Tom Brady and Joe Burrow. Maybe
They do. Actually, you're right. Rob Gronkowski had said in an interview, I think it was on a Twitch stream somewhere, that if he had to pick a quarterback to play with in the NFL right now, it would be Joe Burrow. He likes his style. Everybody likes Joe Burrow. How can you not like the kid?
Wait, he didn't say Blaine Gabbert?
Surprisingly, no.
Man.
Yeah, he didn't say Blaine Gabbert. He didn't say Kyle Trask. He said Joe Burrow. In this candid question, I feel like Gronk's going to retire again, but if he doesn't, do you buy the smoke of him going to Cincinnati? Because again, like I said, a lot of these guys are, looking at how teams have built themselves over the last 2 years. The Rams won a championship doing it. The Bucs won a championship doing it. I hate to put a cliche name on it, but it's almost like a dawn of a super team era in the NFL. And in Cincinnati, while they have to work on the trenches, seems like a lot of people want to play with Joe Burrow.
Well, I mean, everybody talks about the impact that Rob Gronkowski has as a blocker too.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, trying to protect Joe Burrow a little bit more. I don't know if I necessarily. I mean, I buy the interest from Gronkowski, but I don't know if I necessarily buy the thing about Gronkowski going to the Bengals. I do buy, however, Gronkowski maybe signing with the Bills, maybe because it was reported even that like the Bills made an offer to Gronkowski last offseason. Gronkowski was available. He was on the open market for a few days before Tampa re-signed him. And the Bills made an offer to Gronkowski. Gronkowski is from the Buffalo area. I believe grew up a Bills fan. That's something I could see. They might have a need at tight end. Josh Allen's obviously a fantastic player. They should have been in the AFC Championship game this past year playing against Joe Burrow. I think there's a good chance they end up in the AFC Championship game or even the Super Bowl. So that makes a lot of sense. But one thing that actually, was interesting to me, and this is something that Bruce Arians had said at the Combine, I believe on Tuesday when talking to the local media. He said that Gronkowski was training at the Bucs facility 2 times a week. Now, it happens, right? I remember during his free agency year, Quan Alexander was training at the Bucs facility before he was eventually signed with the 49ers. So like that so happens because technically he's not like the Bucs have his rights technically until the new league year starts, but like he's still a free agent to be essentially. So I found that interesting though, that he was training at the facility. Maybe that shows he does want to continue playing football. Me and you assumed, and many people assumed, not just us, but that Gronkowski would hang it up when Brady did. And if I had to guess, I would say he probably retires. But honestly, it would not shock me if he continued playing. And I think the Bills could be a suitor. Honestly, though, I think the Bucs could be a suitor too. I really do. I think Gronkowski likes it in Tampa. I think he likes the coaches, and I think they really like him as a blocker, as obviously a receiving threat. So if Gronkowski continues to play, I do think the Bills will be in the mix, but I think the Bucs won't be counted out either.
Yeah. Let's wrap up this conversation for blockers in Tampa Bay by talking about the right guard position. We know that both Alex Kappa and Aaron Stinney are scheduled to be free agents. At this point, I'm curious to know your opinion, but from what I know, you definitely don't get all the sexy reports like you do about Rob Gronkowski training at the facility. You don't get those same reports about guys like Alex Kappa and Aaron Stinney, so I haven't heard a whole lot about them. But if I had to guess, we are assuming we're 10 days away from the start of the league here. A lot of people are going to be assuming. I feel like it's just going to be one or the other, right? Do you feel like the Bucs lean one way or the other? Do you think they maybe make it a priority to try and hang on to both of those guys? What do you think the market for Alex Kappa is going to be? All of these things, I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that, they try very hard to keep both. With Ali Marpet's retirement changed a lot.
Yeah, it does.
I have a hard time believing that the Bucs in one off season are going to lose. They're starting left guard. They're starting center. their starting right guard, and their backup guard who was going to fill in for one of them. I think Ali Marpet's retirement changes a lot, and I think that maybe if Jensen goes, I think it means that Cap is going to stay. I think his market value is around 9 million or so. So that's what you're looking at. Maybe pushes 10 if bidding war starts. Who knows? He's still young, still good. But I don't think Stinney will be that expensive. So I think it's easier to retain Kappa and Stinney. Now, all three, Kappa, Stinney, Jensen, I don't think you can keep all three. But I do think it's easier to retain Kappa and Stinney. And if I had to guess, I would say that's the direction they go. I do think Ryan Jensen to the Bengals makes a lot of sense. I know in those free agency fits when like it makes a ton of sense, normally it doesn't happen, but that one just feels like the Bengals are going to make it a priority. So I would say that Kappa and Stinney return. Then the Bucs are shopping for a center. So, I haven't heard much on either guy, but I don't. That's not a bad thing. I don't really think.
Yeah. So the combine was this week in Indianapolis. Our buddy Mr. Bucs Nation was actually there. We'll be talking to him soon. But Bruce Arians and Jason Light spoke to the media, and for people hoping to get an update on the Buccaneers quarterback situation, it wasn't really the one that they were hoping for. I think the biggest impression people took away from this is that Bruce Arians is ready to roll the dice on a guy like Kyle Trask, and he also said something along the lines of Blaine Gabbert having the answers to the test, which is what a lot of people remember Tom Brady telling the Buccaneers before they won the Super Bowl against Kansas City. So, what do you think? What did you take away this week from what BA and Jason Light were telling the media?
Well, I mean, one thing that I thought was clear is that they really don't believe that many quarterbacks are going to be available for trade. Deshaun Watson will be out there. Jimmy Garoppolo will be out there. But other than that, if you want Sam Darnold, you could probably get Sam Darnold in a trade. But
no, don't say
no,
that.
I mean,
man.
I'm just saying, who wants Sam Darnold?
It just made me physically ill. I mean, the Panthers without Sam Darnold are probably going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL next year. But
I'm not saying that people are going to roll with it and say, "Oh, Sam Darnold."
Yeah, Evan said on the Cannon Fire podcast that the Bucs should sign Sam Darnold.
So I mean, obviously, those types of guys, but other than that,
Teddy B.
would. Well, no, about the trade options per se.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, I personally think he's going to return to Green Bay. Russell Wilson, I don't think the situation in Seattle is all sunshine and rainbows, but I do think he'll probably give it one more year in Seattle and just see how it goes. Derek Carr doesn't sound like he's moving. Even a guy like Kirk Cousins doesn't sound like he's moving. So when you're talking about potential quarterbacks for trade, this is Jimmy Garoppolo. That's going to also, Jimmy Garoppolo is not the huge name, right? But also he's going to have shoulder surgery next week. So he's not going to be throwing for a few months now. Do you want to take a chance on that and give him a 3rd round pick? Probably not. Deshaun Watson, the Bucs, there was a report a few weeks ago that the Bucs were looking into Deshaun Watson, this and that, just doing our due diligence. And it doesn't sound like the Bucs are going to be making a move for Deshaun Watson. It doesn't sound like that's something that's going to happen. So other than that, there's not many options to trade for. So you're left with the free agents or you're left with the guys you already have. The guy they already have is Kyle Trask. He's the only quarterback on the active roster right now. Blaine Gabbert's a free agent. Ryan Griffin, I think, is technically a free agent. So, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. So I didn't think a trade was likely before the combine, but I think especially now afterwards, I can't imagine a trade happens.
I gotta tell you, I'm sure along as everybody else, and listen, there's going to be people who listen to this podcast and they disagree with how you and I feel about this. I know that there are going to be people in the comments who still feel pretty passionately that the Buccaneers will be able to pull off a blockbuster trade and they will end up with a stud at quarterback. I'm not saying it can't happen, because it isn't a 0% chance that it happens. But I'll tell you, man, before the combine, I mean, hell, the last time that we did a podcast, I was kind of in that camp. Like, if these last 2 seasons have given me feelings of anything other than pure enjoyment, it's the confidence that my team is just going to make this trade. Because, I mean, let's face it, there's been plenty of times where we have scoffed at trades here on the podcast, and I mean, even on Twitter and social media, and the Bucs go out and do it. You know, they either go out, not necessarily trade for somebody, but they make that signing that you didn't expect them to make, but obviously it ended up being the best piece that they needed at that time, led to a Super Bowl championship, which we will never stop talking about. But you guys know the rest of the story. So I think for a lot of the people who are still optimistic, there's still plenty of reason to be, but let's kind of address the uncomfortable elephant in the room before we talk more about what BA and Jason Light said. It does seem increasingly likely that this might be a little bit of a gap year for the Bucs if they, you know, I mean, I don't know. I think re-signing Chris Godwin's going to be a priority. I still think he's going to be on this roster week 1 next year. I think the defense is going to be different. Guys like Jason Pierre-Paul have expressed an interest in continuing to play, whether it's in Tampa Bay or not. And he wasn't.
Ndamukong Suh as well.
And Ndamukong Suh as well. Sue was fine. I don't know how I would feel about the Bucs re-signing him. I don't mind it. It'd be cool to see them draft a stud in the first round and get a little bit younger at that position. But, you know, you just signed Vita Vea to a long-term deal. He's going to be here. A lot of the pieces of this Bucs team are still going to be here. Mainly the Jason Light draft picks, which he has knocked out of the park these recent years. But, I mean, what is the direction of this Bucs team in 2022? Because it's a touchy subject for a lot of people. And, you know, for folks hoping for them to win another franchise-high 13 games, it might be a conversation we need to have.
Well, for folks thinking about that, I want you to do 2 things. One, I want you to look at their realistic options at quarterback. And I want you to look at their slate of opponents for 2022. And you tell me if you think they're going to win 13 games. I think even if they had like a Derek Carr, it would be tough to win 13 games with that schedule. You'd be looking at maybe 12 at most. You know, you'd be looking more in the 10, 11 range with even like a talented guy like Derek Carr. It's a tough schedule. So when you're talking about it being kind of a gap year, look, the Patriots went through it. Right now they have Mac Jones, who they think is their guy, regardless of what you think about Mac Jones. The Saints just went through it. Right? I mean, they almost made the playoffs. You know, there's gonna be some. I mean, the Chargers were about to go through it before, you know, Herbert just lit the world on fire. Like they were gonna start Tyrod Taylor. And then, you know, Tyrod Taylor got hurt and Justin Herbert stepped in and boom, you know, after Phillip Rivers, the Steelers might do it this year. Like, you know, it happens. What you hope doesn't happen is a situation like the Broncos where Peyton Manning retires and then they have no answers. Like they throw everything at the wall and nothing sticks. You know, that's what you hope doesn't happen. Is Blaine Gabbert that guy? Maybe. I mean, I don't think Blaine Gabbert's that good, but I do think there's a decent chance he could be the starter. Is there worse options? Probably. Is there better options? Probably. But, you know, when you're talking about being a gap year, I don't think it's the end of the world. You know, it's going to be tough to accept that for a lot of people because, you know, they've had the best 2-year run in franchise history. And they're like, you know, oh, well, this and that. Look, like, that's sports. Like, you have your highs and you have your lows. And when we say gap year, that doesn't mean we think the Bucs are going to go 2-15 next year. Like, that's not what we're saying.
I don't even think there's a possibility.
2-15, maybe they don't go 13-4. Okay, it's not the end of the world.
Maybe they don't go 13-4 with Blaine Gabbert as the starter, but if they roll with Kyle Trask,
definitely don't.
Yeah, I mean, if they roll with Blaine Gabbert over Kyle Trask, I feel like they could win more games. But let's be honest,
win more games
with the roster the Bucs still have. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on offense. You're going to have to figure out the running back situation. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about what BA said at the Combine this week, but we said this in one of our previous videos on YouTube. The Bucs still have pieces to win, man. You can build this defense up. There's still a lot of work to be done with this defense, and a lot of it looks promising. Sounds like Joe Tryon's going to be hitting the weight room, right? I mean, that guy's already big. He's fast. He's lanky, but you beef him up a little bit, throw some protein powder in his morning milkshake. I mean, come on, man. There's a lot of exciting things with this Bucs team to talk about. And if you have listened to this podcast over the years, you know that we have seen worse. I don't think the Bucs are going to go out there and go 5-12. I don't think they go 6-11. I don't know if they win 10 or 11 games. But I mean, I feel like with a guy like Kyle Trask, your floor is 3 wins.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a depressing year after winning the Super Bowl and Tom Brady's final season. But let's be honest with ourselves. But again, free agency is yet to start. Jason Light, Bruce Arians, it sounds like they're chomping at the bit. I mean, they're probably a little reluctant. It's hard to lose the best quarterback in NFL history and then Ali Marpet right behind him. But it seems like they're excited to build this team. Bruce Arians said it's what he loves the most is building teams, putting together a core of players, and making a run at a championship. And regardless of what the team looks like week 1, that's what everybody in that locker room's intention is to win another championship. So it's like, we just have to wait and see. I know we're kind of tossing a bunch of stuff in the air right now. That's the nature of this episode of the pod. But, I mean, folks, it's that time of year,
So, yeah, it's not just a one-year thing. Like, why can't they have a down year in 2022 so they can rise in 2023? And when they rise in 2023, they can stay good for 2024 and 2025 and 2026. And then you can get a little bit of a run. So why does it have to be? If they trade for Russell Wilson, great. They'll be really good this year. Great, but it doesn't have to be that way. I would personally be surprised if Kyle Trask was the week 1 starter. Maybe if Blaine Gabbert ends up being the starter, Kyle Trask eventually gets some reps down the road during the season. But as far as week 1, I would be surprised. But like I said, I mean, the Patriots had a gap year and they were in the playoffs the very next year, right? The Saints had a gap year and they almost made the playoffs. They got bounced. They got eliminated the last week of the season. I think they go 10-7 or 9-8. So it's not go ahead.
I was going to say, we won't mention what happened to the Patriots once they got into the playoffs, but
no.
It is just a testament. It is just a testament to team building. And if you're anything more than a casual fan, especially if you are more than a casual fan to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you know a thing or two about team building. And
I love team building. That's the amount of mock offs, and it's for any sport. You should see my notes. I have Phillies, Flyers, Sixers, Bucks. I have all these mock off seasons and stuff. It's great. Franchise mode and stuff like that in the video games. It's so fun. But I just think that I do think 6 and what would be 6-12, right? 6-11.
Yeah, 6-11.
6-11. I do think that could be realistic just because depending on what happens, injuries can always happen and their schedule is brutal. Their schedule is literally brutal.
It's almost like the NFL gave them this schedule thinking this would be Tom Brady's final season.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
they wanted to just put him through the ringer one more
time. It's just luck, honestly. It's just the role. It's just how everything shaped out when you're playing the divisions. Of course, when the Bengals are actually good now, that's when the Bucs have to play them. So
hey, Bucs are also the first team in NFL history to lose a home game to go play in Munich, Germany. And listen, I'm grateful for the international games. I am not grateful for our season ticket holders who experienced a price hike for one less home game. That is unfortunate, but it is rumored to be Kansas City. So while we're talking about Buccaneer updates, that's another
pivotal game.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna lose the home crowd for a game against the Chiefs for a Super Bowl rematch. You're gonna lose the home crowd. You had a chance to have Bucs Chiefs in the same exact place where Super Bowl 55 was played, and you were like, no.
It's obviously not confirmed that Kansas City is the team just yet. The NFL hasn't announced it, but it is more than a rumor at this point. So we'll see what happens.
But I mean, I do think they could win six games. And if they win 6 games and get the 10th pick, guess what? You're getting a real difference maker there. Maybe you do get the quarterback of the future, right? What if Trask starts a few games and doesn't play well, and then you can get your quarterback for the next 10 years, and then you're back in the playoffs? Then was that 1 year of winning only 6 games, was it worth it? Should be. Like, that should be worth it. So yeah, like, it's not the end of the world. They're not going to win 13 games. They're not going to do it. They're also probably not going to lose 13 games. Like there is a middle ground there, and I think the range is now, again, the range is probably 6 to 8 wins. However, to cap this conversation off before we get back into our final topic, folks, there's an entire offseason still to go. Okay, we haven't even started free agency yet. We don't know who's on the roster. We don't know what the draft's going to look like. We're assuming that Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask are going to be the 2 quarterbacks. It could be Teddy Bridgewater. It could be Andy Dalton. It could still be a trade. It could be Jimmy Garoppolo. Who knows? Does Carson Wentz get released? It could be him. Russell Wilson could magically say, "I'm out of here," and it could be him. Who knows? We don't know. So it's tough to project exactly. That's why we do a season prediction show right before the year. So stay tuned for that when we have a schedule and everything, a set schedule. But it's the topic, to cap it off, a gap year is not the worst thing in the world. It's just, you have to be able to do it right, because like I said, you can turn out like the Patriots and miss the playoffs 1 year, then be right back, or you can turn out like the Broncos and they still don't have a solution at quarterback.
Yeah.
Is Kyle Trask basically Paxton Lynch? Basically, is the question I'm asking.
It'll be interesting to find out. As far as season predictions go, I think it's going to be a tough year to continue our hot streak the way that we have.
I don't know. I don't know, man. Well, I when I predict the Bucs suck, they suck. When I predict they're good, they're good.
Yeah,
so
but how much are they going to suck this year is the question. Like we have said this entire show, we'll have a much better idea of these things in the next coming weeks, and we are back to keep you guys updated on that, so stay locked right here and over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cannon Fire Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcasts. So we're going to keep you updated on the status of this team, but like, how much are they going to suck this year? Is it going to be so bad that we embrace the suck? Is it going to get that ugly? Or
no,
again, are the Bucs going to be, hey, Bucs are betting favorites to win the NFC South? Is that still a realistic goal?
The NFC South might suck.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about the
literally
Panthers.
The Bucs might be able to make it into the playoffs going 9-8. Like, that's a real possibility.
Listen, it doesn't matter what happens in the regular season. You get to the dance, you got as good of a chance as anybody else.
I mean, and if you win the division, you get a home playoff game. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a real chance that they can win the South. Like I said, whole offseason to go, all 4 teams. We'll see what they all do in the offseason. But man, Sean Payton's not the head coach of the Saints anymore. I know Dennis Allen still dominates the Bucs, but I mean, the Panthers and Falcons. Who knows what's going on with them? There's a real chance that they could. But there's also a chance that, like I said, that gap year happens. They miss the playoffs, and then you're trying to not rebuild. But I think Scott Reynolds said it from Pewter Report. He said in a Fab Five, a reboot, not a rebuild.
You wouldn't dub it. You wouldn't dub it a reload.
No. I think even he said that, because technically you're not going to be reloading the same roster. It's going to be a different roster. It's a reboot. It's it's the same, but a little different.
Right. Like an updated operating system.
And one way they can help do that is through the NFL draft.
Yeah, very true. Listen, we will forever miss our Lord and Savior, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., the man who led us to the promised land, who made the Bucs the most relevant team in the NFL for 2 straight seasons. But I gotta tell you, dude, as someone who's been rooting for the Bucs my entire life, this is a very interesting time to talk about this football team, and I'm kind of excited for it, because the ones who have been there through the good and the bad, you can appreciate when a bad year ends up being 2, 3, 4 good years, and hopefully the Buccaneers can come out of this season. We'll be talking to you a year from now with more positive things being said, but like, I think the uncertainty of it is a little bit exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I will
If
say
they
that
still had Tom Brady, it would be the same conversation. We're gearing up for another championship run, baby. We're going to be, shooting to be the 1 seed this year. We're going to get home field advantage, all of that good stuff. And that's a great conversation to be had. Like, I will be forever grateful that the Cannon Fire podcast was a thing during the Tom Brady era. Some of the best seasons in franchise history. We got to watch them. We got to talk about it. And that's some of the best experiences of my life. But like this right here, I think this is what takes our podcast to an entirely different level, when you can start to talk about the team and measure how much they may or may not suck next year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I will say, completely wasted my great segue to the NFL draft, but whatever.
Yeah, well, listen, I had to get one more Brady reference out, because eventually it's not going to be cool to be doing that.
Well, I mean, everybody's still talking about him like he's playing, so I don't know.
Yeah, I guess he's going to be traded to San Francisco, is what the internet's
telling me. He's
going
to be playing for every team, apparently. Every team but Tampa. That's where he's going. Yeah, I don't know. And then, and also one thing, and I think Scott Reynolds might have mentioned this too. Having Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask as your only two quarterbacks would leave the door open if Tom Brady wants to come back. Like in June, if he says, like, I'm serious about this. Like,
I know you are. I can see the look in your eye.
Like, he's like, oh, I want to be back. That would open the door. How is it going to be possible? Reynolds brought it up. How is it going to be possible if they have Russell Wilson on the roster? Then you're going to have to trade Tom Brady, right? Like, then if he says he wants to come back, well, then you have to trade him, because you can't have Russell Wilson and Tom Brady taking up, $100 million at cap space. So that would leave the door open. However, I mean, Arian said at the combine he slammed it shut. So
yeah,
we're not going to talk about Tom Brady much more when discussing the future of the team. But it's always just like you said. Like, we could have been doing this podcast at any point in the timeline, but we were able to do it during the era where the greatest football player of all time was playing for the Buccaneers. And not only that, they won a Super Bowl. Like, it's not just like, oh yeah, he played for him, they went 8-8 and then 10-6 and then he retired. No, like, they reached the pinnacle, they reached the top. And it was crazy that we were able to experience that as a podcast.
I know you were chomping at the bit to talk about the NFL draft, but one more thing. The franchise tag deadline is on March 8th. That is 3 days from when we are recording this. So who do you think's going to get it? If I had to assume, I think it's going to be Carlton Davis. I think Chris Godwin is enough of a priority for this team where they want to get him locked up to a long-term deal, make him a Buccaneer, because I would hate to see him in any other uniform, to be honest with you. So I think that's a priority for them, and I think hanging on to your best cornerback, or at least your number one cornerback, is also a priority for them, and the franchise tag seems to be the best option for doing that. But what do you think? There's a couple of really good options. They could obviously hit Godwin with the tag again, so you never know.
Arians was asked about that at the combine, and I have a story up on Bucs Nation right now, talking about the quotes that they had said about Chris Godwin. There was a few questions asked about him, and Arians was asked if they could tag him for a second straight year, and he said, I wouldn't say it's out of the question, hopefully not, so we can do something else. I would love to get him under contract. So it sounds like the Bucs would prefer to get a long-term deal done, as you do most of the time with these situations. The franchise tag is kind of used as a last resort. Now, the interesting thing is, since the Bucs tagged Chris Godwin last offseason, this offseason, they could tag him again. This would be the last offseason they could tag him again, but the price would go up. Last year, I believe the franchise tag was around $16 million for Godwin. This year would be about $19 million. So if you're paying $19 million for 1 year, why not pay him like $18.5 million for 5 years? So, like, the franchise tag for me for Godwin doesn't make a ton of sense. I will say, though, one thing before we really get into Carlton Davis, I would be shocked. The vibe that I got and some of the things I heard in Indy, just some of the quotes that were made public, but also, some of the things that I have heard when talking to some people, I would be shocked if Chris Godwin played anywhere else in 2022. I mean, Mike Greenberg is probably sitting there like, what are you guys doing? Because you're ruining all my leverage here when it comes to, trying to make the money work. Because, Arians had said Chris is so valuable to what we do. And obviously we really, really want him back. Jason Light even said, I mean, he went as far as to say it would be hard for me to imagine moving forward without Chris. That is a clear, I mean, he's saying hard for him to imagine. Like that's
I mean, he probably said something similar to maybe something, similar to that when talking about Mike Evans a couple of years ago before they signed him to a long-term deal. But like, yeah, that's not something you say lightly.
There's no way. There's no way you make that comment and then he goes somewhere else.
Right.
There's no way. So that's real quick. We have plenty of time to talk about Chris Godwin. We'll be doing podcasts before free agency hits. When free agency hits, we'll be doing it all. We're back, folks. But yeah, Carlton Davis. I think Davis is the most likely candidate. Now, to put out there, the Bucs don't have to use the franchise tag. Like they don't have to. They used it on Shaq Barrett in 2020. And they used it on Chris Godwin in 2021, but they don't have to use it for a third straight year. History shows you they haven't really used it much. I still would bet, though, that Carlton Davis gets the tag. The way they talked about him said, yeah, we really like him, but he's got to stay healthy. He needs to play in all 16 games. He missed, I believe, 7 games last season. So I think they're going to give him the tag, which is about $16 million. A lot of people are going to say, well, that's too much. Look, that's what you're going to get paid as a corner. Corner's a valuable position. I
mean, realistically,
we'll see where it goes.
Realistically, we talk about market value for a lot of these guys. Carlton Davis, let's discuss that for a minute. I'm not sure what his number is estimated at. But I mean, I still feel like 16 million. I don't know if there's a lot of teams out there that would pay him that kind of money. Realistically, if he were to hit the open market, and I say that strictly because he missed half the season. 7 games is a lot of games for any corner.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, he's 25 years old. He's a good young corner, number 1 corner. Spot Rack's calculated market value is 19.6 for him. Yeah, they're projected as a 5-year, $98 million contract. He'd be the second highest paid corner in the league. The comparable players, and I will say, these comparable players, you are right. It would be, I think, a little rich, which is why the franchise tag for only 16 million makes sense, right? The Bucs get him a little bit of a discount there for just 1 year. Jalen Ramsey, Marshawn Lattimore, Marlon Humphrey, Tre'Davious White. Do you think Carlton Davis is better than any of those 4?
No.
I don't either. Carlton Davis is close, but I don't think he's better or on the same level as any of those 4. He's probably like a tier below those guys, I think. Right? I'm higher on Carlton Davis than some are. I know a lot of Bucs fans really like Carlton Davis, but like the national guys don't like him as much. I think he's a tier below a lot of those guys. So, like, why would you pay him that? Right. So I think they're going to want him to prove that he can stay healthy. And hey, if you go out there and prove that you're number 1 corner, I'm sure the Bucs would gladly give you $19.6 million a year next year, on a long-term deal. So,
I definitely think he's the kind of guy who has the potential to go out there and earn his money. Like, he has the talent. He's really turned out to be a great pick for the Bucs. He's been a more than serviceable corner for this team. And when you look at their history of drafting cornerbacks, I mean, you have to appreciate a guy like CD. So to have him on the team is good. Seems like the Bucs are going to do what they can to make sure it happens another year. But let's talk about your biggest takeaways from the NFL Combine, which was this week. A lot of rookies to be looked at, and a lot of questions still for the Buccaneers in the early rounds of the NFL Draft. First round, they're going to be picking at number 27. So you're not going to get a guaranteed superstar, but you still have a pretty good chance to land a stud player if you do your homework, which Evan surely has. So what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, this class, it's interesting because to me, there's not a lot of elite talent in this class. Like, I don't know how many, you said superstars. I don't know how many superstars anywhere in this class are going to come out of this class, but I think there's a lot of depth. You're going to be able to find quality players in the first 4 rounds instead of maybe the first 3 rounds. Maybe you find some gems in the 5th and 6th round. So I think this class does have a lot of depth. It just doesn't have that high-end superstar elite, like, talent. But, it's still there. A big one, which is, I think, talked about really every offseason when it comes to the Bucs, is the running backs. The Bucs have 3 running backs that are scheduled to be free agents: Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, and Giovanni Bernard. And I have a story up on BucsNation.com detailing that the Buccaneers have met with multiple, and when I say multiple, I mean multiple running backs at the combine. Now, the combine visits are more like just saying hi, talking about them, trying to get to know them a little bit on a personal level. The real interest will be shown when the Bucs have their top 30 visits, and you can literally invite a prospect to visit your facility. That's when you only get 30 of those. So you're making them count. You're choosing 30 guys. Those are clearly the guys you have interest in. But I mean, as far as at the combine, they met with Breece Hall from Iowa State, who's considered the top running back, Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M, Kyron Williams from Notre Dame, Georgia's James Cook, Florida's Damian Pierce, who I know a lot of people like, Chris Fisher, friend of the show, friend of ours, former host of the Bucs Brief podcast. He really likes Damian Pierce. Brian Robinson from Alabama, Rashad White from Arizona State, and Max Borgi, not really sure, from Washington State, and Tyler Allgeier from BYU. James Cook is from Georgia. He is the brother of Dalvin Cook. So there's a little bit of family history there. And when you watch them, they're very similar players. But he said that he met with the Bucs, and he described his meeting as good, and said that they asked a lot of questions like any team would, but it was a great conversation between the two. He's a guy, he's not a first. And honestly, none of these running backs to me are round 1 guys. Something that I talk with the depth. I don't think there's a top end running back that needs to be drafted at 27, right? There isn't a Najee Harris in this class. I don't think that person's there. I don't even think a guy like Travis Etienne is there. There's not a bona fide, oh, this is the guy. But there's a lot of depth, right? You're going to be able to find, even in the 4th round, you'll be able to find a good running back. So it'll be interesting. Cook will be a guy who's probably going to be picked sometime on day 2. I would say maybe at the earliest, the late 2nd, which would fall in line with the Bucs there. At the latest, maybe the late 3rd, which I think would be an ideal scenario. But Kyron Williams of Notre Dame, he also sat down with the Bucs, and he actually said he was able to sit down with and talk to everybody in the whole organization. He said, from Coach Arians to the GM. He explained that he was really excited to be able to tell them the type of player I am, and I'll tell them what I can bring to their team. So it appears that he had a really good meeting with the Bucs. He has a lot of the stuff that they want. He's kind of like a younger version of Giovanni Bernard, where he's like a receiving back that can run a little bit. James Cook is too, but Williams is definitely on their radar, it seems. So I know we say this every year, and it rarely happens because they've drafted 2 running backs on day 2, and one of them is Ronald Jones, and the other is Keyshawn Vaughn. But I think they're going to draft the running back within the first 3 or 4 rounds. And I think there's a good chance that's going to be one of those 9 names that I mentioned. I know I mentioned a lot there, but I mean, we can talk a little bit about, we have time to talk about the draft. So I want to tie us into free agency a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on those meetings. But after that, let's talk about the futures sort of Fournette, Jones, and Bernard really quick before we close this thing out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, there's a lot of talk about the skill positions in the early rounds for Tampa Bay. I mean, wide receiver has been listed as an option. We have said it before on the show that it is something that they could consider. It's a fun thought if they're going to move on from Chris Godwin. And that's a pretty big if. It's a pretty expensive if. You talk about filling out the needs of this football team. you and I talked about this a couple of days ago, but in my opinion, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the trenches being addressed in the first or second round. I mean, you talk about free agents on both sides of the football, guys either retiring or continuing their NFL career somewhere that is not Tampa Bay. Jordan Davis, a big defensive lineman like him, he's a talk of the town today after running a 4.78
and
40-yard dash.
You can forget about him being at 27.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be at 27 after his performance today, but I like talking about guys like that because if you, hypothetically, if he is there, could you imagine the duo of Jordan Davis and Vita Vea together? Like that's your long-term answer at the middle of your defensive line, the most important position where you can control the ball every single snap and get after the quarterback, open doors for not that great edge rushers, even though you still have Shaq Barrett locked up for a couple more years. Like there's plenty to talk about with this defensive line in particular, and I think that's what I like hearing about the most. But, it seems like the Bucs should definitely address the trenches in the first few rounds. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, they may have to address the offensive line in the first few rounds, the interior offensive line. Your tackles are set, right? Obviously, yeah. Tristan Wirfs, and you just signed Donovan Smith to an extension. So your tackles are set. You're not really going to be looking for one of those, but you could be looking for a guard. You could be looking for a center. I doubt it would be center since they just drafted Robert Hainsey. I think they like his development. I would guess if Ryan Jensen moves on, I would guess the Bucs sign a veteran center to replace him, because I don't know if they think Robert Hainsey's quite ready. I think they would sign a veteran center to replace him, and then they would try and bring Kappa back and draft a guard there to compete with Stinney for the other spot. The tough thing about the trenches, and normally I'm with you, however, this interior defensive line class is not good. It's literally Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, and then a bunch of meh.
It feels like that's kind of been the case these past couple of years. I remember
last year it wasn't good either.
Yeah. We had the same conversation a full year ago.
Yeah. Last year, this year's class is a very much comparable. This year's class might be slightly better, but it's not great. So in the first round, I don't think, unless like a Jordan Davis would be there, and he's definitely not going to be. I don't really see anybody worthwhile at 27 if you're talking interior defensive line. Now, interior offensive line, Zion Johnson, I believe he's from Boston College. He's a guy who is a guard. He can play basically almost like a plug and play starter, I think. But he's a guy who could be your long-term answer at guard, and he's a cheap option too, right? We talked about you get Donovan Smith, and he's over 10 million, and you have Ryan Jensen there, and you have Ali Marpet there. That's three guys that are at 10 million. You don't really want to add a fourth, right? Obviously, Ali Marpet's gone. Ryan Jensen might be gone. So you're trying to but you're going to have to pay Alex Kappa. What if you have to pay Alex Kappa 10 mil? And then you have the Tristan Wirfs extension. So you're going to have to find ways to get cheaper, talented options there. And a guy like Zion Johnson could be the case. So if you're talking about just round one, I do think interior offensive line is a possibility. Interior defensive line, to me, they could do it. It would feel like a reach to me. I understand the need, but if you're picking need over best player available, that's when you run into some trouble. So there will be opportunities, and we'll talk about it because you don't know about Sue. Obviously, we think Will Golston will be back, but you don't know about him. They need to get a little bit younger there. They do. That's no secret. So, we got a long ways away to talk about the draft. So, like I said, free agency right around the corner. Fournette, Jones, Bernard, all three are free agents. I think the best one with the best chance to come back is Bernard. I think he has the best odds to come back.
Wow. Really?
I'm not saying he's gonna come back. I mean, we all know Ronald Jones is good as gone.
I think that may be the case. I don't know. I'd like to see the Bucs make an attempt to hang on to a guy like Leonard Fournette. I think he could be more than serviceable over the next 2 seasons.
I think
or so.
Don't make an attempt. But
I'm sure.
Are you going to pay him $6 or $7 million a year?
Right. When you're crunching the numbers, I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with what other teams are going to see in him and what they're ultimately going to pay him. You know what I mean? Because there's going to be teams out there that want to pay real money for a running back like playoff Lenny. The guy has proven himself after almost being cut from the Bucs in December of 2020. 2020. He figured it out, man. And he is,
he actually played better in 2021 than he did in 2020.
Oh yeah.
So like he cleaned up pass protection, was a really good pass catcher. 4
touchdowns against the Colts, right? The one at the end to ice it was just electric. I mean, so many great runs. He tied it up in the the divisional playoff game.
He was the last
LA.
Bucs touchdown.
Yeah, the last touchdown of the year was playoff Lenny doing what he does best, coming in clutch. And obviously, we know the Bucs came up short, but I mean, man, you talk about what he has brought to this offense.
Yeah.
He learned how to catch the ball this year.
Yeah,
I can't believe we're sitting here gushing over Leonard Fournette because we just used to bitch and moan about him dropping the football, but he's the most talented running back on the roster. And I know he's not technically on the roster. He's a free agent. But I'd like to see the Buccaneers try to keep him around.
They are going to try.
Yeah.
I do believe they're going to try, but I think it's going to have to be a deal very similar to what he signed last year, which was about 1 year for $3 million. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be, I think a lot of teams last year were a little bit hesitant to offer him what he wanted. I had heard he was looking for around 6 to 7 million last year. I think he could easily get that this year, and I think he's going to. He may be a guy that looks at the Bucs quarterback situation and says, oh, my quarterback isn't going to be Tom Brady. Well, then I'm going to go somewhere else. Ronald Jones, I think, is a mutual thing. We all knew Ronald Jones wasn't going to be back. That's not breaking news.
If any player has been vocal about his stance on
both sides seem just ready to move on. Is what it is.
Yeah.
And then Giovanni Bernard. I don't know if Giovanni Bernard's going to be back. I just think he's the most likely out of the guys based on cost, based on relationships, based on fit that could be back. And I'm just saying, you would have Giovanni Bernard sign back, and then you'd have Keyshawn Vaughn. You had a James Cook. I mean, James Cook is one of my favorite players in this entire draft. If the Bucs get him, I'll be ecstatic. You have a running back room of James Cook, Giovanni Bernard, and Keyshawn Vaughn. It's pretty good to me, honestly.
Well, obviously, with Keyshawn Vaughn leading the way, right? Pounding the rock.
Yeah.
Bruce Arians said at the Combine this week that, Keyshawn Vaughn has really stepped it up, and he's a starting caliber NFL running back. That's your boy Sneak.
We're watching 2 different people there, Brucey.
That's your boy Sneak, bro. Come on.
I know. I can't doubt Sneak.
Oh.
I for one, never doubted him. So.
Right, yeah.
When he had that run against Carolina, I was like, that's the player I've been telling everybody is there. I don't know why nobody wouldn't listen to me. I don't understand.
Let's go ahead and wrap it up with our favorite segment here on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the return of the Take Bag. Evan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so real quick, there is no bag this time. Sorry, folks. I know. There is no bag.
What kind of gimmick are you running here, man?
I know. Next time, though, there will be a take bag. Okay, I promise. Next time there will be a take bag, an actual bag, I guess.
Yeah, let's clarify that he is referring to the physical bag that he uses as a prop on the video podcast. That would be something, right? It's our first take bag in a few weeks. Evan, take it away, and you just tell everybody you don't feel like doing one this week.
Yeah, well, actually, the take bag is there is no take bag. That's the take. Anyways, so J.C. Jackson over the weekend, there was a report that the Patriots aren't going to franchise tag him, and he's likely to hit the open market. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, the Bucs could sign him," and I'd rather him than Carlton Davis, and I would too. I think J.C. Jackson's probably a better player than Carlton Davis. He's more of a ball hawk. But dude, J.C. Jackson, there was a report that he's looking to become the highest paid corner. Like I already talked about earlier, Jalen Ramsey's getting paid $20 million a year. J.C. Jackson is not Jalen Ramsey. He can't shut down one side of the field. I know I always say there are no shutdown corners nowadays. It's look, Jalen Ramsey got burnt by Mike Evans a few times. There is
he didn't get burnt. He got
corner,
absolutely cooked in that divisional game.
The shutdown corner doesn't exist in today's NFL. Just with the rules and everything, it just doesn't. Right. But J.C. Jackson is very good. but everybody's like, oh, he could be, you'd only have to pay him a little bit more than Carlton Davis. This dude has 22 interceptions in the last 3 years. Picks get you paid, man. Like, picks get you paid. One of the reasons why the Bucs are going to franchise Carlton Davis and not re-sign him to a long-term deal worth $20 million
because he
doesn't
dropped a
have
lot of
22
interceptions.
picks. Yeah,
well,
he doesn't have 22 picks.
He has a few picks that he dropped over the last few years.
He might have 22 picks that he's dropped.
Yeah. Oh man,
he has total. Carlton Davis has total 6 interceptions in 4 seasons. So I mean, that's not bad, but like
22 picks in 3.
Picks get you paid. Like J.C. Jackson is gonna get the bag, and I'm just like yeah, like you think, like, there's no way. Okay, that's my take. There's no way J.C. Jackson is coming. They're not going to dump Carlton Davis for J.C. Jackson. I don't think so. Yeah, there's that. Moving on to another part of the secondary. I'm very interested to see what happens with Jordan Whitehead. I'm very interested because we haven't talked about him enough, and I think he's going to be one of the best signings of the entire offseason for somebody. I don't know who that is. I do think there's a decent chance that it's still Tampa. I think they really like him. And I think if the money's there, if the money's right, we don't know the markets of these guys, right? We won't know that until they sign the deals, honestly. So people on the inside know much more than we do. But in terms of Jordan Whitehead, like Spot Rack has his market value at, let's see, $7.8 million. So that's probably the low end. I think once you start to get into a bidding war, he might get up to maybe even 10. But I mean, if they can get him, Spot Rack has a 3-year deal for $23.6 million. He would be paid as the 16th highest safety in the league. That's fine.
That's a steal for. Let's be honest. I know a lot of people are going to assume we're homers on this, but like you said, Jordan Whitehead has the potential to be the best signing of the year for somebody because his development over the last 2 seasons, the way that he played last year, I mean, the guy is really everything you would want in the safety that he is.
Player. He's going to turn 25 in a few days. So he's still young, still plenty young. And I mean, even if they sign him to that 3-year deal, he'd still be able to go back in the market when he's 28. Like it'd work out for both sides. So I would really like it if they were able to. Like I said, I'm not sure if they're able to. I think there's a decent chance they can, but we'll see. And then my last take will be on another free agent. And then we'll have more like as far as like targets and stuff go in a podcast in the future. It will be before free agency, we promise. But my last thing will be about like the Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul. I'm going to package these two together. I get the sense that Jason Pierre-Paul is probably going to be moving on. What he meant to the locker room in Tampa. And really, I think his time in Tampa is going to be kind of overlooked, I think, a lot. But like he was a great leader. And, they're going to miss him, but I do think they could look to maybe add a free agent, like a rotational pass rusher to replace him, because I don't know if they want to just, hey, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, go play 90% of the snaps. Like, I don't think they want to do that quite yet. So I do think they could add somebody. A name I put on Twitter was Dante Fowler. I think he could be a guy, maybe a return to Florida, right? He's a Florida Gator, got drafted by the Jaguars. Maybe he's a guy, but and the Ndamukong Suh, like I haven't wanted the Ndamukong Suh on this football team for like 3 years, and every year he seems to come back. And like he played fine last year, but like what's he, 35 at this point? Like I just don't like you. Like if you're gonna pay Ndamukong Suh $8 million, $9 million, you have like there has to be a better, younger player that you can get for $8 or $9 million a year on the market. Like there has to be. I don't have any particular names on the top of my head, but there's got to be somebody that's a little bit better and a little bit younger. I like Ndamukong Suh. I just think they overpay him every single offseason. I think they overpay him, and I hope they don't make not necessarily a mistake, but I hope they don't do it again.
I tend to agree. I like Ndamukong Suh a lot as well.
It's time.
I think he has been a force. I think he has been a big part of the Buccaneers' run support. And listen, he's had some pivotal plays as a Buck. You know, I think about the scoop and score against the Rams in 2019 that sealed the deal. You think about the fumble against the Chargers, the forced fumble where he was able to get there, and then the Bucs make the comeback happen in the second half.
I mean, he had that big sack on Mahomes when he laid him out basically in the Super Bowl, and
yeah, dude. I mean, and
every player's time with a team comes with an end. You know,
and Ndamukong Suh has been more than I could have expected, to be honest with you. I thought he was going to be another one of these overpaid interior defensive lineman who comes into Tampa for a payday, plays a couple of mediocre years, and then, happy trails. But he's obviously a part of the Super Bowl squad. He is enshrined in Tampa Bay history, and some people even think he's better than the previous defensive lineman we had wearing number 93. That's a pretty pivotal take, depending on who you ask. A lot of people have strong feelings about Gerald McCoy, man. A lot of people, I think a lot of people got bullied by him online or something, man, because people who don't like Gerald McCoy, they really do not like Gerald McCoy.
Yeah.
If you notice that,
they don't like him on a personal level.
Right. Man, oh man. But ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for this episode of the Cannon Fire podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. I know we've been away for a little while. We took a break. I'm usually pretty candid with you guys on this show. I went through some unexpected life changes, so if you're watching on YouTube, my backdrop is a little bit different. We're going to be rolling with it. Maybe it'll change again here in the next couple of months, but we're making it happen.
We appreciate the patience.
We do.
We really do. We appreciate it. We're all good and we're back. So
felt good to get on here and do another podcast. While we are not as fresh as we were at the end of an exciting NFL season, we are getting back into the groove of things here on the show and excited to move forward. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show, and of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_Daily, the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. And check out his articles, man. BucsNation.com. Your boy, Evan Wanish, putting out some quality stuff a couple of times a week from what I understand. Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Folks, that's the show. We'll have plenty to talk about over the next couple of weeks or so. The next time we talk to you, we will more than likely know who is getting the franchise tag, so we'll keep you updated on that and much more throughout the rest of the offseason. Should be a good one. Glad to be back. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you guys in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.